Sworn into the Supreme Court of the United States in 1981, Sandra Day O'Connor broke new ground for women in the legal field as the first female justice. For 24 years, she moved the needle, serving as the swing vote in many cases. But before she made her mark as justice, O'Connor grew up on a cattle ranch near Duncan, Arizona. She attended Stanford University at 16 years old, graduating magna cum laude with a bachelor's in economics in 1950. She went on to continue her education at Stanford Law School for a law degree. After a few years went by, she and her husband moved to the Phoenix area to settle down and start a family. She took a 5-year break from law before picking it back up in 1964, volunteering in political organizations and presidential campaigns. In 1965, O'Connor was the Assistant Attorney General of Arizona, and she kept that seat for 4 years. After that, Arizona Governor Jack Williams appointed O'Connor to fill a vacancy in the Arizona Senate. She then ran for that open seat and won the following year. O'Connor became the first woman to serve as any state's majority leader. She served 2 terms. In 1974, O'Connor was elected to the Maricopa County Superior Court and then moved to serve on the Arizona State Court of Appeals. Now is her move to the Supreme Court in 1981.
So today, I'm pleased to announce that upon completion of all the necessary checks by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, I will send to the Senate the nomination of Judge Sandra Day O'Connor of Arizona Court of Appeals for confirmation as an Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court.
Nominated by President Ronald Reagan, O'Connor was confirmed by the Senate with a unanimous vote, 99-0. Though she was known as a moderate conservative, she would take on the reputation as being unpredictable in many of her decisions, taking each as a case-by-case situation and not sticking with ideologies for the sake of them. Some key rulings where O'Connor joined the majority in a 5-4 decision were Planned Parenthood v. Casey, affirming Roe v. Wade; Lee v. Wiseman, affirming the separation of church and state, prohibiting prayer at school-sponsored activities; Stenberg v. Carhart, overturning a state abortion ban in Nebraska; Grutter v. Bollinger, allowing colleges to use affirmative action. O'Connor retired from the court in 2006 and moved back to Phoenix. She was honored with being awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Barack Obama in 2009.
When a young Sandra Day graduated from Stanford Law School near the top of her class in 2 years instead of the usual 3, she was offered just one job in the private sector. Her prospective employer asked her how well she typed and told her there might be work for her as a legal secretary. Now, I cannot know how she would have fared as a legal secretary, but she made a mighty fine justice of the United States Supreme Court. A judge, an Arizona legislator, cancer survivor, child of the Texas Plains. Sandra Day O'Connor is like the pilgrim in the poem she sometimes quotes, who has forged a new trail and built a bridge behind her for all young women to follow.
Taja Davis, KGA 9, on your side.
Sandra Day O'Connor is an iconic figure in American politics. As the first female Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, she strode the halls of Capitol Hill like a colossus, though always retained a very human touch.
Can you tell me how you first met Justice O'Connor?
Yes. It's almost like yesterday, and it wasn't yesterday. My husband and I were transferred from New York to Phoenix, Arizona. And one of the first people I met was Justice O'Connor on the tennis court.
Really?
As a friend, I could always count on her. I could always call and say, what do you think we should do about this? And she would always have an answer. She really was there for you when you needed her.
Raised on a cattle ranch in Arizona, she became an attorney. After marriage and a family, she was eventually appointed to the Supreme Court by President Reagan in 1981.
Did you know she was being interviewed for the job? What did you know about that?
Well, the most exciting part was whether she would be on the short list and whether she would get an interview. That was sort of the most intriguing, exciting, and everybody figured that if she got an interview, she'd win it hands down.
And win it she did. And though she'd later admit that being the first woman justice was a daunting prospect, The appointment was one of her proudest moments.
The pictures from that day with her in the Rose Garden, sitting together on two chairs, kind of cocked at an angle for the photographers, talking to Reagan, and she's got the biggest smile you've ever seen, and she's just so excited, and Reagan's having a grand time. And I don't think she'd ever look better than that day.
During her tenure, Justice O'Connor became one of the court's most influential figures.
Sometimes I'd go to the court when I was in D.C. and see these guys try to argue with her. I don't think so. She was good.
She turned out to be such a great ambassador for the court. It was a home run deal. And she kind of angered both parties because she was maddeningly moderate and pragmatic, which drove extremists on both sides of the aisle crazy.
And she was so clever, so very honest about this, bringing everybody together over meals and things like Republicans and Democrats. It was so wonderful to see.
Many of her decisions related to women's issues.
She, of course, changed the life for many women all over the world, to be honest with you. She would go to different countries, I would see that. And the women were as responsible and as happy that she was there at all times.
O'Connor stepped down from the Supreme Court in 2006 to tend to her ailing husband, who had Alzheimer's disease. But 17 years later, her legacy lives on.
She was a team player. She got all those older men in the court and brought them together, and they worked together through some pretty bad odds. And I wish she was there now. God, I wish she was there now. She would not put up with a whole lot of this stuff. She would have solved it somehow for everyone's benefit. I really feel that.
I want her to be remembered for being a centrist on the court.
Sandra Day O'Connor did was leave her job to go and care for her family. That's Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't have those same challenges, but that's something that women have to contend with. We want to lean in, as Sheryl Sandberg has said, but we also have these other obligations that we have to take care of. And so that's what I take away from Sandra Day O'Connor's story, which is this duality, this dual responsibility that women have, not just to lean into their careers, but also to be the caregiver and to take care of their families. I think Leslie pointed that out as well about her, that being a remarkable aspect of her life. But we see that all the time, and I've seen that working for powerful women before. I mean, the speaker was a doting, wife and mother and grandmother, and watching her sort of move from conversations about the war in Syria to who's going to pick up the grandkids from school was, and her being able to manage it all was pretty fascinating. So, and I think that's a part of the story about women leaders that isn't quite told often enough, because if we did, I think it would sort of cement in people's mind that women are, to some degree, quite superior, and are more prepared than men to manage all of these, the challenges that come along with these big jobs.
Even after, when you're talking about sort of staying on the job until the job doesn't want you anymore, almost, what she also found was that there was incredible service to be found beyond that. She was very committed to civics and teaching young people about how this government works. And she's the founder of this website called iCivics.org, and it's dedicated to helping teachers teach their kids about the nature of government, their role in government, what they can do, that there's plenty of ways to serve and to continue to serve outside of the Supreme Court or other positions that you've been appointed to.
Anne-Marie,
yeah.
On that point, I think agreeing with Ashley and kind of turning another page on this, the issue that we're talking about right now is that in so many ways, Justice O'Connor did this on her terms, right? She made those choices. That's what worked for her. And I think, unfortunately, in politics, it's like, oh, we don't agree with that choice, or she should have stayed longer, or, if she was a man, she would have stayed till the end, or, you can use the different examples. But the truth is, she understood her impact. And she understood that the next generation, and she talked about that extensively, really needed a command of civics and engagement, because that was the concern, so that we didn't fall into the same kind of challenges that her generation or previous generations had, is to have these competent new generations who could engage at any level. And I find that really remarkable, and it continues to live on in the work she did.
All right, we are going to take a quick break. Ashley and Leslie as